Well, happy Monday, everyone. It's Greg Dixon here with Shared Visions Unlimited Publishing, and today we're talking with Andrew Darlow. Anyway, it turns out we were both members of the same Grand Connection, and both were speakers last week on a on a business growth buffet 2-day event. And anyway, we had a brief chat later, and it turns out we have a lot of things in common. One one of the things that I'm not doing as much now, but I have done, is help people capture their family and personal stories and publish them. And and Andrew has a product for that, and that was part of your talk, I think, actually. And then the other thing is that you're uh, a photographer, and you've published, done a lot with photography. You have a number of books on photography, and an inventor in general. So there's a lot of things that we can talk about here. And do you want to just give an introduction to yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm Andrew Darlow. I'm a photographer, a writer, and an inventor. I live in central New Jersey. And since I was about 12 or 13, I've had a love for photography, which led to becoming a professional photographer and a writer, editor of a magazine. And now I primarily help people with their Macs and their iPhones, both making better photographs, editing their photographs, and also backing up so that they don't lose their essential precious photos, videos, etc. And I also have an invention, which is a custom bubble bag, and 4 books that I've written. So there are a lot of things that I've gotten my hands into, and throughout it all, I always try to think about what I would like to know and what I would like others to create, and then I try to create those things.
No, that's fabulous. And so you have quite a few books that you have published over the years. Many of them are on Amazon and other places. I see a lot of them are about photography and techniques and things, but not exclusively. so so with your, why don't you just talk about a bit about what you're doing to preserve photos now? What's your that the technology that you've created?
Oh, absolutely. So at the heart, I have a backup blueprint, which people can find at backup.fm. If you want to play along, you can just get my backup blueprint. And there's also an ebook there, which you can download. That's one of the gifts that I gave at the Grand Connection event. And what I've done is I've created a blueprint that can then help people with their main areas of their digital life so that a dropped phone or a stolen laptop, which would be a terrible thing to happen, doesn't cause you to lose incredibly important data or personal photos and videos. So during my talk for the Connection event, I talked about two of the very important parts of a backup strategy. One is battery backups. And for most people, that will look like an uninterruptible power supply, which is also known as a UPS. It's a box. They generally range from $60 to $500. And this box allows you to not lose what you're working on. Let's say if you have a computer that is plugged into the wall and not just a laptop, and the power goes out even for a second, well, whatever you're working on is probably going to be lost. This can stop that because you're plugging into that and it has a battery. So the battery helps save you from losing your data. The other thing I talked about were some cloud backup services, which, if anyone has heard of Carbonite and Backblaze, is the one that I tend to recommend for a number of reasons. What's nice about these is for about $6 to $10 a month, you can pretty much connect one computer and any hard drives or SSDs or thumb drives. You can connect to it, and they will go slurp up into the cloud. And depending on which service you use, they may never come down until you stop paying, or you have to plug things in at least once a year. And I like Backblaze, as I mentioned, because if you lose a lot of data and you don't have time or patience or maybe the bandwidth to ask for it to come down over the air, uh, or over the internet, then you can have them send you a drive, and they'll even refund you back the cost of the drive. You'll just pay for the shipping. So those are the two main things that I covered. And there's a lot more parts of a backup strategy, but those were two that I chose because those are two that almost anyone can do very inexpensively, and just in a few days, if, with a little bit of planning and a little bit of research.
Yeah, I think when you during your talk, I made a few comments in the chat. Is that in some ways, like where I'm living right now, we had floods a couple of years ago, so whole houses just disappeared, and
Wow.
a little before that, there was a whole town that burnt to the ground. So in a way, from a pure backup point of view, you have to have your laptop disappear and all of your local devices disappear, so like a backup strategy. And I've recently I do a lot of video work, and had I'm going to name them two Panasonic drives that have failed, relatively new. Of the last 30 years, I've had four drives fail, and it's unusual to have two fail within a year.
Wow.
Yeah, so and it's kind of interesting. They just decided that Apple says I can't write to them anymore. I've been able to get the stuff off, but it's so anyway. So now I'm a big like I mentioned that we've done a lot of things with capturing family stories,
Mhm.
and uh, and a lot of it I've done quite a few broadcasts on how to organize that stuff. And I tend to use Google Drive because you can create folders and you get the whole family and everybody upload stuff and
Mhm.
put it there. And but anyway, so it's yeah, it's really good advice because sometimes we just think even just having stuff on a phone. My wife Bonnie, we went to go visit some people and she left her phone on the top of the car. That caused probably 6 months worth of
Oh,
grief because um she forgot her Apple ID.
oh God.
Yeah.
That's not
So,
good.
so
Wow.
it's yeah, so now yeah, because I told her you needed to put it in a safe spot, and she put her safe stuff because she had it on a piece of paper. It says you need it somewhere. Anyway, she had it on the phone. No, that's not what I meant.
Wow. It really helps when people hear these disaster stories because, like, I was just reading a book. A guy, he wrote a book, and it's about a totally different topic. It's about making board games, but he said that he lost 4 months of his manuscript because of a hard drive crash. So
Yeah,
it just happens constantly. And whether, okay, there's a few ways. The easy way and pretty much free is having a Gmail account and using Google Drive and
yeah,
typing actually inside. That's a pretty good way to just do it for free because they give you 15 gigabytes of storage. Not the best, but you mentioned Google Drive, and if people don't want to spend, let's say, $8 or $9 a month for something like Backblaze or Carbonite, then you can just set up Google Drive, and they have a backup feature. So you just tell it what you want to back up, and everything will come out of one computer and get slurped up into your Gmail account. Now, if you want to be a little more daring, but have a little more power, you can set it to sync. Now, this has some advantages, but it's not a backup. This means that you set Google Drive to sync with a folder or group of folders on your computer, and now it's going to mimic whatever's there. Depending on how fast your internet is, it may take a little time, but that means that anyone who gets into your Google Drive, friend or foe, if they take something out, well, it's going to come out of your computer's drive as well.
yeah, yeah. There are lots of different solutions, and each one has not everything's perfect. So for sure, I have a habit. I write a lot. I blog a lot. And I've done a lot of things, and I have a habit of writing live. So I've created like either in WordPress, I'll write the article right in WordPress, and I also had something I created myself was data driven, and I cut more than once. The hosting company has lost everything, and so,
Yes.
and so I says, "Geez, I wish I had a copy of that on my Google Drive." So
Yes, that's a problem. try never to type directly into any of these programs that have a blogging engine.
Yeah.
The biggest one for me is LinkedIn. I really, really try, unless it's a comment. If I'm going to spend some time, I'm doing it, in
Yeah.
my case, in text edit on a Mac. And that way it's on a laptop. So I'm pretty much safe, even if there's a
Yeah.
power issue or something. And then it just helps me organize everything, and then I have everything. If my account goes away, I've been hearing about a lot of people's Facebook accounts, they just like that, or Instagram, it's gone. And so that's a whole nother question thing that I can address after. But I try not to make any of my actual posts inside of any of these software packages. Now, before, though, I said with Gmail, it's a little bit different, or Google Drive, because Google Drive is sort of like live to the web if you have a fast connection. A lot of people do that, and if something happens, often it's still there. But I still like to do things offline, and either if it's not a backed up computer, meaning if I don't have a laptop with a battery and it's just a computer that plugs into the wall, it definitely should have a battery backup if you're going to do any type of editing or writing.
Yeah, for sure. So having things in multiple places is a good idea.
Yes, just because Murphy and his pesky law is always around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah. So at Shared Visions Unlimited, my partner, my collaborator, Betty Withrow, and I spend quite a bit of time helping people publish their books. And and we get people from first time authors to people who've been doing this for a while, and everybody's got their own reason why they publish a book. Some may just want something like a lead magnet that they can give away for free, or they it's been on their list for 12 years and they just
Yeah.
need to get it out of their head and get it published. And then others, we've had people come, they've gone through some kind of book consultant, they spent like sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, and they have no idea if they've had any sales or anything, you
Mhm.
know. And so, and you published a number of books, and I know you don't want to talk about the numbers, but you've made more money with your book sales than it's cost you to produce them. I'm just going to, let's leave it at that, right?
Well, yes, all my books were published by different publishers, and I just mentioned I didn't want to talk numbers because it's hard for me to remember, because I don't see the actual dollars. I just
Yeah,
see it. I see royalty reports, and this is going back to 2008, so it's hard for me to remember a lot of the numbers. But what I found is, if you are an author and you're writing books, it's a lot different. I believe those people should be working on the marketing, and then the people who are self-publishing, now you have to be looking at a lot of the behind the scenes keywording and whatever else you help them with. So it's a little bit of a different thing when you are an author under a publisher versus self-publishing.
yeah. So maybe you can. Did you publish anything yourself, or did you always go through a publisher?
These are all through publishers. I was invited in every case to write the books, and it kind
Yeah,
of just worked out in an interesting way, because maybe because I was a teacher and then an editor of a magazine, so I was kind of
yeah,
visible in my area of expertise, if you will. And so I was speaking at different conferences and things, and
yeah,
I had friends who were authors. And often, what happens is, if you have friends who are authors, then often they are going to be asked by their publisher, "Hey, do you know anyone who can do a book on this?" Because they actually will often come to you and say, "We need a book on this topic." And if
yeah.
it's a good match, then it's often it's a match made in heaven.
So that's, yes, perfectly. I've had that experience writing articles, right? I was hanging out in an do an aquasize class, and there was an editor for a magazine, and she would say, "I need an article on customer service for Thursday." Oh, okay, sure. So whatever.
Yeah.
So but that's not your experience isn't what a lot of new writers have. Like we get people asking, says, well, they want, how do you even get a hold of a publishing company? Generally the route is, do you need an agent? And that's the problem, getting an agent. And then, there's a lot of legwork to even get a publishing thing. But, I guess the short answer for you is you were out in the public doing a lot of stuff and you attracted attention from doing things. So,
Yes. Didn't make the work any easier once I signed the contract, though. It's a lot of work, but like anything,
yeah.
no pain, no gain. And the
Oh, yeah.
people who I met through the process and what it did for me and my career once it was done, I think someone said, I hate writing, but I love having written a book.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like once it's done, it's out there, right? Like I sometimes, um, you have something to share and you put it out there, and then it's got a life of its own, right? Either people
Yes.
embrace it or they don't embrace it. And, and I know some of the writers want to preserve, especially like family stories or their biography or something, if they want something to leave behind and that's one of the reasons I like doing the personal story productions, is that you've got a record that it takes some work to capture it, but
Mm.
it's better than, a lot of people, their Uncle Bob passes away and then it turns out, he's a war hero or did
Mm.
these most incredible things and they didn't have a clue about what they were doing.
Absolutely. And I thought that there's something with that This Is Your Life show. There's something there that could be
Yes.
turned into something that looks just like it. Essentially, you are doing that, but that approach is really interesting. And I just saw Buster Keaton's
Yeah.
just a few days ago. So that's why I thought of you and I thought of what you're doing to bring these memories to life for people.
I saw I saw a little interview with Barack Obama the other day, right? I can't even remember who was on, and he said, he was talking about his kids, and anyway, they're talking about speaking, right? And Barack said, well, they just said, well, what do you do? I says, well, I've got some stories. I talk to people about stuff, and
Mhm.
the kids just sort of snickered and laughed, like, who would want to hear anything you have to say? The
Yes,
kids are the hardest sale. So
that's so true with kids. And you find that all the time. And often when people have to work so hard, sometimes they don't have a chance to see their kids grow up, which is kind of sad. So that's why these kinds of memorial books and video montages can mean even more to a lot of families.
yeah. So I have a New Jersey story related to books and photos. So I had some friends from North Vancouver moved to New Jersey. They worked for a friend worked for AT&T near Bell Labs, and we one Christmas they were out in and he said, where we live in New Jersey is kind of like a part of British Columbia, only nice. And I was saying, oh, okay, that's not the New Jersey I have in mind. So
Yeah,
because
yeah, we get a bad rap thanks to some shows.
yeah, well, you could probably find dozens of New York movies where somebody will say the equivalent. What's your definition of hell is a weekend in New Jersey. And anyway, so I had to go to see myself, right? I had to go visit, and it really is a beautiful state. There's some, so really like Princeton, the beaches, a lot of areas, um, and it's the Garden State.
That is true.
Yeah,
There are gardens everywhere and
yeah,
mountains. From the
and
mountains to the sea, we have it all.
not,
And
yeah, yeah,
many people just see the I-95 corridor, though.
yeah, and there's that. there's that area across the Hudson River that has earned that reputation. We're probably where Jimmy Hoffa disappeared.
Yes,
So
yes.
that part of New Jersey is not the most desirable place in the world, but the rest of the state is beautiful. Anyway, so I bought a tabletop photo book because I when I went back to North Vancouver, says nobody will believe me, so I brought a photo book with me.
Yeah, that's great. That is the best way to share what places are actually like. And that's when I first went to Japan when I was very young. That's how I was able to share the story of what it was like when I visited and lived with a family at the age of 18,
Yeah.
taking pictures of Buddhist temples, Shinto shrines, and virtually every meal that my homestay mom made. It was just an amazing experience, and it was the best way I could find to share all those wonderful experiences.
That's great. Yeah, nothing beats photos and video for capturing the moment, really.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what's next? What's your next adventure that you're working on?
Well, I've been inventing a lot of toys and games, so
Okay.
that's been something that's ongoing for the last I don't know 2 or 3 years, and so I've been pitching, and hopefully, I think there's some things that are coming up to the surface and should be. It takes time, so it could be a year before they're out in the market, but at least I'm making forward progress. And I didn't mention I invented a custom bubble bag 15 years ago, and I'll
Yes.
show you what it looks like.
Okay.
It's called the gallery pouch. I have a
Okay.
bunch
Yep.
bunch of things in this one, but what it is, it's a simple product. But what makes it unique, they're all made by hand, one by one. It's essentially like an envelope that has smooth. It's smooth on both sides with bubble, but you can't pop it, even though some people would like to. And it has really nice sides, so you can present this to a client and be proud of it instead of what most bubble bags look like. And they can be made in any size, from about the size of an iPad up to like half the size of a wall. So when you start to get into larger pieces of art, there
Okay.
aren't many options. And what people often resort to are rolls of bubble and tape, which is
Yep.
terrible because you might get one good wrap out of it, but then it's just going to be a mess, and
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
heartbreaking to see people throw away all of that all that plastic. And this is reusable over and over, and
Yep.
eventually, if it does need to be recycled, it can be recycled with plastic wrap.
No, that's perfect. I've spent some time shipping paintings and photography, and something like that is great because it is challenging. Especially if you've got like 4 or 5 pieces in a box, right? You don't want them to rub against each other, and you don't want them to, you want to protect them and isolate them for sure. And Bonnie, my wife, has gone down to her. They've sold her father's has to move out of his home, and so they're pulling out the treasures and art and stuff like that. So some of those bubble. What's your brand name? You're calling it a
It's called the gallery pouch. You can just go to gallerypouch.com,
gallery
and
pouch.
that will show you some information about it. And also, there'll be links to the company, which is Frame Destination. They're based in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
And I believe they ship now not just to the US, but to Canada as
Okay,
well.
that's perfect. So what kind of game do you have that you're out there hoping to get a publisher for?
I have a lot of games. I have card games. I have games that are music based. I have games that are like air hockey. I have games that you throw things. I have board games that teach different things, both more educational and then more mainstream. So I have maybe 10 to 12 different games. So if there are any companies out there who look at games from inventors, designers, please feel free to give me a call.
Awesome, perfect. So I have my two sons were very much interested into board games and strategy board games, and when they were younger, they would like take 3 or 4 board games and then chain them all together.
Wow,
So, yeah, and make up their own games. So,
that's great. That that's really nice when people do that, and that's how a lot of people end up becoming designers by taking games and then making them into something else, something new.
Yeah, something new. Yeah, and now one of my sons has two boys, and they're pretty smart and pretty interesting with games. So one I think is 7 years old, and we were talking. They've been playing Pandemic,
Hmm.
and then James says, "Well, the goal is to eradicate." That's a pretty big word
Uh-huh.
for a 7-year-old, really. But
Yeah, yeah. But kids who are young who play games and who like collect trading cards and that have a lot of good text on them, they are way past a lot of their peers in so many ways. So
yeah,
it's all really great.
that's good. Yeah, actually, James's grandmother's a little bit she's a little bit frustrated that she taught James how to play innovation and then he beat her. But
That's
we
funny.
had our experience with the boys is if we got a new board game for Christmas, we had a fighting chance to win on Christmas Day, but the two of them, they're twin boys, and they sit there and they would play it 20 times, analyze the game, and unless it had a fluke factor, we couldn't win after that.
Yes. Yeah, that's what happens. But that's great. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I had pretty good success with Dominion and Firefly,
Hmm.
but anything else, we used to play a game called Agricola,
Oh, I
which
haven't
is
heard
a
of.
farming game. It's pretty elaborate, big board game.
Hmm.
And my son Kale, he wouldn't even look like he was trying to farm. He wasn't planting crops or raising animals, and somehow he'd end up winning.
Uh,
So,
yeah, that's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, but that's what. Yeah, well. Anyway, that's great. And you're gonna. I think you also are going to try to do a little bit more with your prints and your photos. Wait, do you want to talk a bit about that?
Well, I just like to find more outlets for my prints. I have hundreds of thousands of photographs, mostly digital now,
Yeah,
and so I would like to get them out into the world. I'm not sure how that is going to happen. There are so many options today, so I need to really think that out and then decide which place is the best place for me to set them free. And but they won't be free, obviously.
yeah, they won't be free.
But that's okay. Uh, there is a place sometimes to make certain images free for things like wallpapers and things like
Yeah,
that. I haven't really thought about it that carefully, but I will be thinking a lot more about that in the upcoming months.
sure. So you mentioned that you were thinking of offering them through Amazon, to like the Amazon marketplace. Amazon doesn't print and sell stuff, but you can sell. Lots of people are selling prints through there.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking of all my options. I have like 7 or 8 different things on a list, so I need to look at all of them and then see sort of what makes the most sense. And sometimes it makes sense if it's not that expensive just to go for all and then see. It's just a matter of taking some time and making a decision.
Yeah. So years and years ago, I attended. It was an online workshop thing presentation from this woman named Shaw Wasmond, and
Mhm.
lives in London. And we were talking about selling an online course, and her main idea was sell it everywhere.
Mhm.
So she said, "You because the most of the work's in creating the course in the first place." But she would say, "Put it up on ClickBank, put it up on
Right.
Groupon, put it up
Mhm.
on Teachable, put it up
Mhm.
everywhere." And she listed off about 5 or 6 places that must be specific to Europe that I had never heard of them. But that was the
Mhm.
whole idea: is just put it up everywhere. And
Mhm.
and that's, and to some degree you've done that with your books. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're, you said you've gone through a number of different publishers, and also they show up in different outlets for and, and the path how they got there is a bit different, but
Mhm.
but they're, the idea is that available everywhere, everywhere books are sold almost.
Yeah, that's right. And there used to be a company, I hope someone else does it, where you can go there and ship basically for free anywhere around the world. It's hard for those companies to exist anymore, but
Yeah.
there was at least one or two. So I need to look more, because people do ask me sometimes, how can I get your book? And if they're not in the US or Canada, sometimes it's a little harder to get it without the shipping like doubling the cost.
Yeah, well, that's one of the beauties of Amazon is because they have local printing facilities in most countries. So
Mhm.
you can ship out of, England, and they'll print it in England and ship it in England, because it's insanely, even just in the US and Canada, right? If you can print something in the US and send it to a US address, or you can print it in Canada and send it to a Canadian address, it saves a lot of trouble. Once you go across the border, it gets a little ugly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I really enjoy speaking with you and learning more about the process of working with Amazon and Ingram Spark and all the different options. So I'm sure we'll have more conversations.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and sharing, and you want to just you had the backup.fm. Do you want to just list off some of the places where you can get some of these treasures?
I would say the best place is just go to backup.fm, and there you can get a lot of my information. You can sign up and get my backup blueprint. I'll send
Yeah.
you some news and interesting tips from time to time. And then you can search for me on LinkedIn. I think this is being broadcast there.
Yeah.
And I have found LinkedIn to be just an incredible place to network with people. So feel free
Yeah.
to invite me to connect.
Yeah. LinkedIn's a great place to start. That's where we generally start with people.
Yes, yes. And I'll just show one of my books, which is Biscuit for Your Thoughts. It's a little hardcover book
Yeah.
that I was asked to do. All my other books are how-to books, but this one is a book that contains a lot of my photographs of
Okay.
dogs from over the years with funny sayings that dogs might say if they were philosophers.
Sure.
So it was a really an honor to be asked to to submit my photography for this book.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great fun.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and enjoy your day.
Thank you. You too, Greg. Take care.
Will do.